Hey guys, welcome to Punky's Pro Wrestling. Okay. I have to vent. I watched a couple of different clips with Vince Russo talking about Christopher Daniels. Now you know I love Christopher Daniels. So I can't not vent. In two different clips, Vince Russo talked about Christopher Daniels talking to Chris Van Vliet. And he basically said that Chris lied. He said, I don't want to call anybody a liar. Yeah, but you are. And before I go there, I just want to say, for those of you who did not see the Jeff Jarrett and TNA 3-part Dark Side of the Ring special, in my opinion, Vince Russo was not truthful. In my opinion, I wouldn't personally trust him, as Judge Millian used to say, if his tongue came notarized. He did not come up with TNA. Upper body anatomy and rear body anatomy, let's just say. He did not come up with that. Jeff came up with TNA. Total non-stop action. Was it supposed to make you think of anatomy? Yeah. Maybe. But Vince Russo did not come up with that. There were a couple of other points where Vince Russo was full of crap. Another point, he's crying about Jill. I'm not even sure how well he knew Jill. I don't know. Maybe he knew her well. I can't say that with any certainty. I can say there were no tears when he was pretending to cry. Everyone else had tears running down their faces. He did not. In my opinion, it was not sincere. But again, these are my opinions based on my observations. Could I be incorrect about anything? Yeah. I do not believe, however, I'm incorrect on either of those observations. But again, my opinion. There were a couple of other things that I knew weren't true. Just from watching TNA, I knew they weren't true. Now, to the Christopher Daniels situation. You guys all know that I love the Fallen Angel. That I've had interaction with the Fallen Angel. That he is a kind, sweet human being. You know that. You know how I feel about him. And I'm going to defend him. You know that. And if you don't, now you do. Vince Russo basically said, he said, I don't want to call anybody a liar, bro. But he basically said he lied to Chris Van Vliet. And if you watched Chris Van Vliet in that interview, you know. Because Chris knew that what he was saying was true. So, for those of you who didn't see it, Christopher Daniels was talking about Vince Russo writing for him and him trying to do what Vince asked him to do. And one of the things that Vince asked him to do was not do his hand symbols, meaning his this, and the way he held his hands in that fallen angel symbolism. And Vince Russo said signals. No, Chris said symbols, meaning his fallen angel symbolism. Like this. His this. His this. How he posed for promo photos and all of that. And it was part of his character part of his gimmick. And Vince Russo told him not to do it. If your boss tells you not to do something on camera, you don't do it. And then the fans go, something's missing. You know what I mean? And he told him not to wear a ring jacket. Now, Russo said, that sounds like the opposite of me. And in some ways it does. But here's what I think. I think that Vince Russo saw Christopher Daniels as a Dean Malenko, because he was absolutely brilliant in the ring. Man of 1,000 holds without question, like Dean Malenko. And he wanted to create a Dean Malenko character for him, where he simply was that good. And I do believe he told him his work would get him over, because Dean Malenko's work got him over. Because he was looking to turn him into a Dean Malenko, which was never going to work. Dean Malenko was quiet. Dean Malenko didn't cut promos. Dean Malenko did get over on his work, because we all respected his work. Christopher Daniels got over on his work primarily because, again, we all respected it. He could do things we couldn't even pronounce. I mean, they both could. They both came from a lot of Japanese work, a lot of overseas work, that gave them both such a tossed salad of abilities that made them good. But the difference was that Christopher Daniels could cut a promo better than just about anyone. And for Vince Russo at one point in his comments saying, well, learn how to cut a promo. Learn how to cut a promo? You obviously don't know Christopher Daniels. He's one of the best in the business at cutting a promo. He's still cutting them in retirement to elevate other guys. As one of the bosses of one of the 3 biggest companies in the business, for him to say he was only ever going to be a middle guy. There needs to be guys that are there to make other guys look better. Oh, you mean jobbers, enhancement talent? Which Christopher Daniels was not, is not, never has been. He was the top guy on the indies. And you say, well, make something of the fallen angel character besides painting your nails black. He did. That character was all fleshed out. That character was unbelievable. Had you let him use the character and show what the fallen angel was. And I'm not the only one saying this. AJ Styles said that. He said, why didn't TNA have him use the fallen angel the way he used it in early Ring of Honor when he did the prophecy and all of that? Why didn't they take notes from that? He can't just decide to do that on his own. It doesn't work that way. But again, in trying to create this Dean Malenko-like character, okay, I think that Vince Russo failed because Christopher Daniels has natural charisma, natural personality. And I think Chris is right. He didn't want me to do anything that had personality. Yeah, because he wanted to turn you into Dean Malenko. Again, this is my opinion, based on being a fan of wrestling for over 40 years. Let's see, I was 6. 46 years. I was 6 years old when I started watching wrestling. So I've been a fan of wrestling for 46 years. I'm not somebody who just jumped off the wrestling train here. So, AJ Styles tried to get TNA to give Christopher Daniels the title in 2009 when they fought for the title, when AJ was champion. And AJ said, look, give him the title at the pay-per-view. Even if you want it on me, I'll take it back at the next television if that's what you want. But at least give him a chance to hold the title. They wouldn't do it. Then, another time, according to Vince Russo himself, AJ Styles comes through the curtain. He said screaming through the curtain. I guess he meant comes through really fast. I don't know. It said, did you see that? Chris was killing himself out there. Because he was talking about how, in his opinion, Chris was all high spots. I disagree. Chris did a lot of work on the mat. AJ's only point was pay attention to it. You guys are standing back here having a conversation, Vince and whoever this other person he named was. Pay attention to what you have in the ring. Pay attention to your product and you will see what you have. He's that good. Or as Triple H and Stephanie used to say, that damn good. And that was the point. He is working his butt off, putting his life on the line, putting his body on the line for you people, and you're not even paying attention. And you know, that was one of my biggest pet peeves in WCW especially. WWE's been a little guilty of it too. Particularly on their B shows, like when they had Shotgun Saturday Night and those kind of shows. If it wasn't a match between two people they cared about, or even a match between someone and a jobber, someone they cared about and a jobber, they talked about the next pay-per-view, the main event, all kinds of other stuff besides what was going on in the ring. It's rude. It's unacceptable. I don't understand why they do that. They don't do it so much anymore because generally speaking, they have all top matches. So they don't really do that anymore. But that was a classic thing. Especially on Nitro. Oh my gosh. It's like Dean Malenko would be wrestling and they wouldn't care. They'd be talking about Hogan and the NWO and a main event 3 pay-per-views down the road. Just all sorts of things. Or at a pay-per-view 3 or 4 weeks down the road. Like, okay, but there's a match in the ring. And I have actually heard Dusty Rhodes and Bobby Heenan, God rest their souls, try to bring it back around to what was going on in the ring when that happens. Neither one of them liked it. They would both try to bring it back around to what was going on in the ring. I've heard them both do it. One of my biggest pet peeves. And it's the same thing if you're backstage having a conversation, not paying attention to what you wrote in the ring. I'm sorry. How do you learn what the fans want if you're not paying attention? then you would have known. And then for him to say that Christopher Daniels got let go because he must have been just as big a pain in Bischoff and Hogan's ass as he was mine. Excuse me? He did everything you asked him to do. How is that being a pain in your ass? Because you don't know how to use him? Because you don't know the first thing about actual wrestling? In my opinion, you're writing a variety show, bro. You're not writing wrestling, bro. That's just my opinion. He writes a variety show. He doesn't write wrestling. And so he doesn't know what to do with an actual wrestler. AJ, he did not have a choice. Believe me, he would have buried AJ just as much. He didn't have a choice. Because AJ was the top of that company from day one. They built that company around AJ. So he didn't have a choice. Believe me, AJ Styles is the last person he would have put the title on given any choice at all. Because AJ Styles was just like Christopher Daniels. Brilliant in the ring. AJ didn't have a ton of... He did. He was the phenomenal one. But he didn't have a ton of character. His work got him over. I'm not saying that he didn't have a little bit of charisma, a little bit of personality, because he did. AJ wasn't a big promo guy, especially in the beginning. It was not great. And he would tell you that. He got better as time went on. CD just always had it naturally. Because CD was a performer. The man had a theater background. Has a theater background. He is a performer. You could have put him in any situation and he could have excelled. But instead you did nothing with him from a storyline perspective. Oh, and Vince Russo always goes back to, I put him in a storyline with Sting and he stank. No, actually he did a very good job. They worked with what they had, him and Sting. They didn't let the storyline play out like it should have. That's what happened there. It was actually very dark and very closer to the Fallen Angel character, only a slightly different character where he like painted around one of his eyes and he grew the dark hair on his face and he just different clothes and really did something different, which apparently Vince didn't like. Like I said, it came up darker, and in my opinion, I think it was one of the best things that he did, even though it was chilling, you know. And of course his promos hit the mark because they always did. And in that situation, but he didn't stink on that. They buried the storyline before they even had a chance to grow it. If you have a plant that's just budding out of the ground and, you know, it's just germinated and it's just starting to come out of the soil, if you don't allow it to grow, it it will die. And what Vince Russo did was the plant germinated. It just came out. They were starting to make a storyline, starting to work together, and there was a lot of mutual respect between Sting and Daniels, and they were really able to do something. And Vince Russo, or someone else, came along and threw an entire bucket of soil on the plant and killed it. That's my analogy. Now, I don't know if it was Vince Russo who stopped the storyline or someone else, but somebody threw a bucket of dirt on a beautiful germinating plant and killed it. Like I said, that is my analogy of the situation. Please let me know what you think. I couldn't believe how many people were agreeing with Vince Russo. Obviously, people who never saw Christopher Daniels. I remember talking to, before I go, a nice young man, a young wrestler, who used to send me matches online and stuff, and he worked with Christopher Daniels. And I asked him, I said, what a learning tree, you know? He must have learned so much. It must have been incredible to work with him. And he said, I did. He said, he's a wonderful man. Great to work with. Such a teacher. And, you know, there's a reason Christopher Daniels is still out there teaching and Vince Russo is not in the business anymore. Think about that, Vince. Think about that. That's, you know, he's still in the business after retirement. Even before his retirement, he is head of talent relations. He also is a trainer. He works with media and stuff like that for TNA. He does a TNA, right? For AEW. Can't believe I said TNA. Anyway. He's really very much a right-hand man for Tony Khan. Because Tony respects him. He trusts him. I got the impression from the things he was saying, that Vince Russo was saying, that he didn't have any respect for the fallen angel. And no clue who he was any more than Hogan and Bischoff did. That's why he got pushed out. It was because Hogan and Bischoff said, who the hell is this? Bye-bye. And we'll bring in our drug addict friends instead. And that's exactly what they did. Hall and Waltman, who were both active addicts at the time. Hall can't tell you that because he's dead, but he would have. And Waltman would tell you that. So, yeah. Even Ric Flair recognized Christopher Daniels for what he was. And worked with him. Now, they missed the boat there because they should have done a singles match between them. During that whole Fortune versus Ric Flair thing, when he came back and joined Fortune with AJ and Frankie. They missed the boat there because they should have put him in a singles match with Flair, which could have main evented any arena anywhere. Again, these are my opinions, guys. Let me know what you think. Do I expect this video to go viral? Hell no. But I wanted to express my opinions. Because you know, if you know me, that I'm going to defend Christopher Daniels. You know I'm going to be on his side. Oh, here's one I forgot to mention. Vince Russo said, he said we didn't want him to have personality. I made him. What was that character with the sauce or whatever? Curry Man. You didn't make him Curry Man. That was a character he was given in Japan and that he built once he understood what the character was. He is the one that suggested that he do Curry Man because you guys wouldn't let him be Christopher Daniels until his time with Ring of Honor at that time was done, because you wouldn't let him do both. That's why he was doing Curry Man in TNA. It wasn't that you gave it to him. It was his character. He had to get permission from Japan to use it in TNA, which they gladly gave him. It was his idea to use it in TNA because they had to figure out a way. Well, actually, they said to him, can you use that character? Because we can't have you being Christopher Daniels in both. So while you're finishing up your obligations in Ring of Honor, can you do Curry Man? And he said, I have to get permission. He got permission, and he did it. So they did ask him, but it was in the context of finishing his obligations with Ring of Honor, because Ring of Honor didn't want him doing both at the same time, and TNA didn't really either. So that's how that came to be. Now, maybe Vince Russo's not aware of that. I find that difficult to believe, but excuse me. Thank you so much for being here, guys. Like I said, please comment, please hype, please, if I have a hype button. I don't know if I even have a hype button on this channel because I don't have enough subscribers yet. Please share this video. I would love for CD and for Vince Russo to see it. I don't care what Vince Russo says. He can't sue me for my opinions. I'm not defaming him in any way. I'm giving my opinions of things that he has said and how he used CD. So share. Like I said, please let me know your opinions and be nice to me and to CD, please. And to Vince Russo. Don't be rude to him either. He's still a human being. And he deserves respect as a fellow human being. I may not agree with him, but I would never disrespect him as a fellow human being. So anyway, even if I don't like him, I wouldn't disrespect him. He's done a lot in the business, things I wouldn't necessarily agree with, but I can't say everything was bad. You can't say that about any human being. I say that and then I think of some pretty awful human beings that have lived. But even they had some good points. Although I struggle to figure out what good points Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy had, but you know what I mean. The majority of human beings have at least some redeeming qualities. But so be nice. Like I said, to me, to Vince, to CD. But let me know what you think. Again, these are the opinions of a 40, 60-year wrestling fan. Sheesh. The traffic is loud. Anyway, excuse that. Ugh. I will see you on Wednesday for Dark Side of the Ring. Samoa Joe and Necro Butcher. Bye, guys.